You sit down to do the work, you tell yourself this time will be different, you open the book, the laptop, the task that you've been avoiding, and within minutes, sometimes seconds, your mind drifts, you check your phone, you switch tabs, you convince yourself you need a break before you even begin. And then the question shows up again and again, why can't I stay focused? This isn't a character flaw. It's not because you're lazy, and it's not because you lack ambition. What you're experiencing is a mismatch between how your brain is wired and how you're asking it to operate. Focus is not just about willpower. It's a biological process. It's governed by circuits in your brain that are constantly weighing effort against reward, novelty against familiarity, distraction against meaning. Your brain is designed to seek novelty. Thousands of years ago, that was survival. A new sound, a movement in the bushes, a shift in the environment. Those things mattered. They kept you alive. But today, novelty doesn't come from nature. It comes from screens, notifications, endless streams of content that are engineered to capture your attention. Every time you scroll, every time you refresh, every time you switch tasks, your brain gets a small hit of dopamine. Dopamine is not just about pleasure, it's about anticipation, it's about the pursuit of something potentially rewarding, and the more frequently you give your brain quick, easy dopamine through social media, short videos, constant multitasking, the harder it becomes to engage in activities that require sustained effort without immediate reward. So when you try to focus on something difficult, something that requires deep thinking, your brain resists. Not because it can't do it, but because it has been trained to expect faster, easier rewards. You've conditioned your attention to fragment. Focus, then, is not something you magically summon, it's something you train. Just like a muscle, it adapts to the demands you place on it. If you constantly interrupt your attention, your brain becomes excellent at being distracted. If you practice sustained attention, even in small increments, your brain rewires itself to support that state. But there's another layer to this. Focus requires friction. It requires you to sit in discomfort. When you begin a task, especially one that challenges you, there's a period where your brain is essentially negotiating with you. It's looking for an escape. It's telling you this is hard, this is boring, this is not immediately rewarding. That feeling is not a signal to stop. It's a threshold. Most people never cross that threshold. They interpret the discomfort as a sign that something is wrong. But in reality, that discomfort is the gateway to deep work. It's the moment where your brain is deciding whether to stay or to leave. And every time you choose to stay, even for a little longer, you strengthen the neural circuits responsible for focus. Another reason you can't stay focused is that your environment is not neutral. It's actively working against you. The devices you use, the platforms you engage with, they are designed with one goal: to keep you engaged for as long as possible. Not focused, engaged. And engagement often means distraction. When your phone is within reach, even if you don't touch it, a part of your brain is monitoring it. It's a background process that consumes cognitive resources. The same is true for open tabs, notifications, and even clutter in your physical space. Your brain is constantly processing more than you realize, and every extra input reduces your capacity to sustain attention on a single task. Focus requires intentional design. It requires you to remove the things that compete for your attention, not because you're weak, but because you're human. The fewer decisions your brain has to make about where to direct attention, the easier it becomes to stay locked onto one thing. Sleep is another critical factor. When you're sleep deprived, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and focus, doesn't function optimally. At the same time, your brain becomes more sensitive to distractions and immediate rewards. This creates a perfect storm where focusing feels almost impossible. And yet, many people ignore this. They sacrifice sleep, they overload their schedules, and then they blame themselves for not being able to concentrate. But the reality is, you cannot outwork your biology. If your brain is exhausted, it will seek the easiest path, which is distraction. Then there's the issue of clarity. Focus is not just about eliminating distractions, it's about knowing exactly what you're focusing on. When your goals are vague, your brain struggles to engage. It doesn't know where to direct effort. But when you define a clear, specific objective, you give your brain a target. This is why breaking tasks into smaller, manageable pieces is so powerful. It reduces the cognitive load. It gives your brain a sense of progress. And progress itself is rewarding. It creates a feedback loop where each completed step reinforces your ability to stay engaged. There's also an emotional component. If you associate a task with stress, failure, or frustration, your brain will naturally avoid it. This is not weakness. It's a protective mechanism. Your brain is trying to minimize discomfort, but avoidance only strengthens the association. To change this, you need to reframe the experience. Instead of focusing on the outcome, focus on the process. Shift your attention to the act of working itself, the rhythm of it, the effort, the small wins. Over time, this changes how your brain perceives the task. It becomes less about pressure and more about engagement. Your ability to focus is also influenced by your level of stimulation. Too little, and your mind wanders. Too much, and you become overwhelmed. The goal is to find that optimal level where the task is challenging enough to hold your attention, but not so difficult that it triggers avoidance. This is why deep work often feels difficult at the beginning, but becomes more immersive over time. As you engage with the task, your brain adjusts. It releases neurochemicals that support sustained attention, but you have to give it enough time to reach that state. Most people quit too early. They never allow their brain to transition into deep focus. They stay in a constant cycle of shallow attention, jumping from one thing to another, never fully engaging, never fully progressing. And over time, this creates a belief that they simply can't focus. But that belief is not based on truth. It's based on repeated patterns of behavior, patterns that can be changed. You have more control over your attention than you think, but it requires deliberate effort. It requires you to be aware of the forces pulling your attention away and to actively counter them. It means setting boundaries with your devices. It means creating an environment that supports focus. It means prioritizing sleep and recovery. It means starting with small, consistent periods of deep work and gradually increasing them. It also means being patient with yourself. Your brain doesn't change overnight. It adapts over time through repetition and consistency. Every moment you choose to stay focused, even when it's uncomfortable, you are reshaping your neural pathways. Focus is not about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about returning your attention again and again to the task at hand, even when you get distracted, especially when you get distracted, because distraction is inevitable. The goal is not to eliminate it completely. The goal is to reduce its power over you, to shorten the time it takes to come back, to build the habit of re-engagement. And as you do this, something shifts. Tasks that once felt impossible begin to feel manageable. Your capacity for deep work expands. Your confidence grows, not because the work becomes easier, but because you become stronger. The truth is, you can stay focused. Your brain is capable of incredible levels of sustained attention, but it requires training. It requires discipline. And most importantly, it requires you to understand that focus is not something you wait for. It's something you build moment by moment, choice by choice, through the way you structure your environment, your habits, and your mindset. Every distraction you resist, every minute you stay engaged, every time you push through that initial discomfort, you are reinforcing the circuits that make focus possible. And over time, those small actions compound. They transform the way you think, the way you work, and ultimately the way you live.